Welcome, everybody. I'm Steve Adler, editor-in-chief of Reuters, and I'm pleased to be here with Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai. So welcome, Sundar. Good to have you.
Steve, great to be here, and thanks for having me.
Great. Well, listen, I have to start with the violent threat to democracy and sitting U.S. lawmakers on January 6th, and really pretty considerable continuing danger. YouTube live streams on January 6th called for the overthrow of the government and promoted violence at the Capitol. YouTube videos on January 5th and earlier anticipated and celebrated what they called Operation Takeback. So my first question is, did Alphabet simply miss the extent of the danger?
First of all, I mean, last week's events, in a democracy, a foundation of democracy is peaceful transitions, and obviously, last week's events were grave, chilling to see, and I'm glad as a country we are taking it seriously, and hopefully, our democratic processes work, and there's accountability through all this. For me, stepping back, we have been, as a company, leading up to the election, one of our, this was the largest investment we ever put into in terms of content moderation around election integrity, and lots of changes, content policies, the way we approach political ads. We made significant changes to what was allowed and what was not. And post-elections in early December, when states certified, YouTube implemented policies and declared content would be violative of our community guidelines if they asserted widespread election fraud and so on. So we've been removing, thousands of videos, including videos from President Trump's channel, if he found them to be violative, we have clear, consistent policies. Content moderation obviously is about identifying content at scale and removing it before people can see it. We reduce the spread. We don't recommend or promote content which we think is violative. And more importantly, we've raised, we've given billions of views, both in terms of labeling we have done, and we raise authoritative content. So from news organizations around moments like this, and there's been a lot of effort there. Having said that, just like with elections 4 years ago and the potential for foreign interference, we are constantly learning through these moments, and the internet as a whole, I think, needs to come to terms with what kind of information can spread, and it's definitely, there's more to do from all our side.
So I want to come back to that a little bit, because I don't think you answered this specific question of were you a bit blindsided by what happened? You're doing things after the fact. You temporarily removed new content from Donald Trump's YouTube channel just last night for a minimum of 7 days. You suspended Parler from the Play Store app marketplace, although I gather not from other Android app stores. Is it a little like getting a smoke detector after the house was already burning? Was it simply something that wasn't anticipated?
We have been worried about, a lot of our policies when we develop do take the possibility of real world harm. That's kind of the foundation. Incitement to violence is something why, we put in new policies. And as I said earlier, post the states certifying, we've been removing, literally hundreds of videos which are violative. And so, I don't want to say we clearly anticipated what happened last week to that extent, but the potential for violence was something concerning. There had been intelligence leading up to it, and so it was an area we had been taking it seriously. But obviously we will assess, and make sure we can continue developing there.
Can you say today that the suspension of the Trump channel on YouTube will be made permanent?
Steve, I think it's really important that we have policies that are expert teams which evaluate, and when we find content violative, there's warning, and then there is three-strike process, and
Mhm.
and it depends on the time period within which it applies. We took action based on the new videos that were uploaded, and those were the only videos which were uploaded since the event. And we make these decisions, with the best faith efforts to be consistent and clear and transparent about how we do it. And I think the teams have assisted for a minimum of 7 days. The comments have been suspended indefinitely, but we'll evaluate and we'll obviously update based on what we see.
Okay, so you've called yourself a technology optimist, and I'm just wondering if the recent events, both this past couple of weeks and recent years, with all of the political and COVID-related disinformation, the racist hate speech, has that shaken that optimism? And I guess I'd ask why or why not?
First of all, I have deep faith in democracies. I grew up in India. My first memories when I was a young child, was in India. They had suspended democratic rule with emergency powers. I remember my grandfather being, I didn't fully understand why. I was very young, and I'd never seen him that concerned. But over time, as I grew up, I began to understand how, as a democracy, you work your way through those moments. And U.S. is a great democracy, and I do think we are resilient to moments like this. And so, both, my point is, these things are not new. As a country, there are challenging moments across history, and there will continue to be. And I think it's a lot depends on how we handle it. To your question on technology, I continue to be a technology optimist. I see progress everywhere. Both, it is true that we dealt with one of the toughest moments in terms of the pandemic last year. It is also equally true that we had the fastest development of vaccines in human history. No expert would have predicted we would have had multiple vaccines with this level of efficacy in this short a period of time. That validates to me the progress of technology. Towards the end of last year, when I saw a development like AlphaFold, where we were able to make a 50-year breakthrough in protein folding from DeepMind, that tells me in the future what kind of breakthroughs will be possible. So I don't think I've lost my optimism. I'm gravely concerned, like everyone else at the current moment, and how we are working our way through it. But I also have deep confidence in democratic systems, and I'm confident we will prevail through it.
Okay, let's turn to some other issues, and then I'm going to come back, I'm sure to your great pleasure, to things like antitrust. But can you talk a little bit about where you're heading at Alphabet and Google? What are you most excited about in terms of what's coming up, products, services, innovation that we want to be watching for?
At a high level, across Google and Alphabet, our deep bet is that, if you work on foundational technologies and apply deep computer science, we can tackle many problems. The most foundational of all is AI. We've taken an AI first approach as a company, and that applies everything to, in Google last year, we had one of the biggest improvements in search results, thanks to, BERT, which was an advancement in AI using transformers as a technology. The same AI is what powers robotics to autonomous driving to our drone delivery project. And so I view it as foundational across everything we do. And when I look ahead, I do feel we are at a point of inflection where AI is progressing, where it is improved. We will be better able to understand language, images, text, speech, and do it all in a more generalized way than ever before. And so that foundational investment, how do you take that and apply it to user problems, is something I think is going to be foundationally exciting for us. We are also obviously evolving as a company. In addition to serving consumers, we are taking not just AI, our core technical infrastructure and platforms and solutions, and bringing it to companies around the world of all sizes with Google Cloud, and really excited about the progress we're making there as well.
Great. Can you talk a little bit more about self-driving cars, about Waymo? What kind of timetable do you see going forward? Kind of what's your 5-year projection for Waymo? Where are we going to be?
It's obviously, I look at the progress. We always took a very long-term view and went for a very hard problem, which is full level 5 autonomy. And to do truly autonomous driving, you obviously have to not have a time in mind. It's a safety first approach, and you have to prove you can do that in a very safe way that is acceptable to society. And so that's what drives progress for us. We have driven 20 million plus miles on public roads, and in Phoenix, we obviously have the rideshare service now working, which is an exciting moment. And and the same technology we are applying not just applies to cars for people, but also for logistics and delivery and so on. And that's the Waymo Via service. I'm optimistic about it. I think in a 3 to 5 year time frame, I think we compared to the very narrow ways in which it's working today, we'll be able to demonstrate it in much larger situations. But we'll be driven by the Waymo team is really focused on safety first, and that's the kind of foundational approach we take.
But in terms of business planning and revenue projection, are you projecting that people will be on the road autonomously driving in 3 to 5 years, and that you'll be generating revenue from that?
In a 5-year context, we definitely hope to be able to generating revenue. The exact use cases, the applicability are all still being defined. And, definitely, as you saw, Waymo recently completed a, fundraising round, and, it has a board and outside investors. And obviously, there's an expectation that comes with that. And so, that's how we think about it.
Yeah. Okay. Back to regulation and antitrust. You've been accused by now dozens, I believe, of jurisdictions across the political spectrum, and we're talking US and overseas, of a variety of anti-competitive practices, and including a number of your businesses in terms of areas. There's search, there's advertising, there's ad tech, mobile apps, Android pre-install, shopping comparison products. Obviously, you don't believe that you are anti-competitive. I guess my question is really, why, in your view, are so many governments and regulators wrong about how they look at your practices? How are they looking at them wrong from your perspective?
I think it's first of all, it's appropriate with scale comes scrutiny. As a company, there are areas where we are ahead, areas where we are behind, and so you mentioned briefly newer businesses like Waymo, but when you take something like cloud or enterprise business, or when we make hardware, we are a smaller player investing too. On our core areas, obviously, we operate at scale, and I think it's important, to some extent, I look forward to being able to make the case. I think we have worked hard. We are one of the largest R&D investors in the world, and we've been doing that for many years. I'm talking tens of billions of dollars to stay ahead and innovate and make sure, and everything indicates that users prefer using our services. And having said that, we've always understood with scale, if there are feedback, we've been open to regulation. Privacy has been an important area where GDPR has given certainty. We are open to regulation which makes sense. We just need to know the rules of the road. I think we are making the case. We have always approached our work following the rules of the road, putting users first and innovating hard. But having said that, it's important to me that we constructively engage through these processes, and to the extent there is important feedback through that, and we need to make changes, we will, and that's how we've always approached these processes.
Yeah, so just to turn to one of the cases, the federal government, basically it alleges that you have a monopoly over search and you use it to block rival search engines. And one of the things people talk about specifically there is the fact that it's been reported that you pay Apple as much as $12 billion a year to make Google the default on Safari and iPhone. The response I've heard is that from Google is essentially people don't use Google because they have to, they use it because they choose to. And I guess the question then that follows from that, well, why spend billions of dollars to be the default on Apple if people are going to choose it anyway?
Look, I don't want to comment on specific commercial partnerships, but stepping back, it's very it's a normal practice in industries. Pretty much all apps, pay to get distributed, and making sure that products are easily available to users. And the question is, do you do it like you would do consistently? Other players would do. It's also important to understand through all this, we not just across OEMs, across carriers, we compete in deals. We win some, we don't win others, but it's a way by which we also are sharing value with the entire ecosystem as well. And I think and it's important for us to explain what we do there, and these processes will allow us to do that. But over and over again, there have been cases where we haven't been the default, and users, we see evidence where people change defaults to choose Google, and we've seen that in other use cases as well.
Yeah. No, and nobody's suggesting it's not a great search engine. The question is, if you're not trying to exploit the monopolistic aspect of it, why would you pay to be the default? You can follow up answer or just tell me you've already answered the question.
I think today, for example, in app stores that are, if you're selling your product through a retailer, you pay for, there's a way the industry works, and we are part of it. And, we want to make sure our services are easily accessible to users. And so we are doing, in some cases, it's other products and platforms who are creating a marketplace around these things, and we are participating in that. But we do it with a view so that we can reach our users and be conveniently available to them. And I think it's natural for a company to do that too. And so, I look forward to being able to explain all this in the right construct further.
Okay, so other of the efforts in this field are in the congressional regulatory part of it. And of course, Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act has gotten probably the most attention in terms of regulations. And I want to press you on this because I know you and your team have to have thought about it a lot in detail. And many people think it provides too much protection for the platforms to post misinformation and hate speech and disinformation. And to my knowledge, I've only seen Google sort of give vague expressions of openness to change. So I do want to press you specifically, since you have to have thought about it, how do you think it should be amended, both to protect free speech and also combat disinformation?
Look, this is an important topic. And so I've never seen something that is so foundational, which is so misunderstood. Section 230 is foundational. It applies to, people think it applies to only a few companies. It pretty much applies to user-generated content across everyone. If you're putting up a website tomorrow and you have reviews on your website, or you're taking comments, you rely on Section 230 provisions. I think the most misunderstood part of it is Section 230 is what promotes freedom of speech. It's what allows us to really support freedom of speech. You also need to be able to take action against harmful content, for example, content that incites violence. And the context is changing. COVID didn't exist a year ago. Last week's events, is something, the context is constantly changing. In Google alone, 15% of queries every day we haven't seen before. And so Section 230 is what gives platforms certainty to go and act in new emerging areas and do what they need to create to protect their users and support freedom of speech. I think, there are good proposals. Obviously, the US is thinking about it. Europe is thinking about it with its Digital Services Act. And I think there are, initial proposals which get into specifics about platforms needing to have both clearly stated policies, transparency around how they implement it, giving users right of notification and mechanisms by which they can appeal, etc. And so those are all, to me, make sense. And then there may be areas where there can be specific regulation based on a type of content, but you have to tackle that narrowly, and it needs to be done with a lot of thought because it is constantly changing. And in some ways, from a company standpoint, having clarity there would help us.
Yeah.
But it's also important to understand if you make it very onerous, it actually is very burdensome for newer companies which are trying to create products and services too. So I definitely think it's a complex area. I expect there'll be a lot of legislative engagement in this, and hopefully we can all make progress there.
Okay, thank you for that. Something obviously near and dear to our hearts in the news business, I want to ask you about that. You're an avid reader of news, which we all appreciate. I know that you read the Wall Street Journal in print each day, and reflecting the value of print. I was at the Wall Street Journal when the Wall Street Journal decided not to give news away free, but to charge for it. Do you think news organizations made a critical mistake in allowing their content to become a part of Google's search free of charge? And would they have more control over their financial viability? Obviously, the industry is in huge trouble if they had not become part of this Google search community.
Mr. We've been in the news industry for a long time. I think internet has been a big disruptor, in more ways than I can simply summarize. I definitely think when I see the amount of traffic we give to publishers, and I see the value we provide. Having said that, advertising has definitely been impacted, and not all publications, other than a few mainstream publications, have been able to make that shift to subscription-based models. Yeah. We are, we recently announced a new showcase, and we've committed to $1 billion in additional licensing revenue over the next 3 years. Across search and YouTube, we are promoting news content more than ever before, and we are committed to sending traffic. We are working hard to support subscription models and improve how all that works. I think we need to do more as a company here. But I do think the underlying trends which are driving disruption here are pretty profound, and all of us need to do our part. And I do think governments should look at what better ways to support the news industry, and I think those are all important things to think about too.
So since we're short on time, I'm going to move to a couple more questions quickly. But sort of as a yes or no, do you think Google has had a positive effect on the news industry, or a negative effect, positive or negative?
I definitely think we've always been committed to high quality information, and when I look at the traffic we serve to publishers, I always think we should do more, but I definitely think we've had a positive impact.
Okay, all right. So diversity has been a big issue in every business, and everybody's looking at it and trying to do better. You've had a lot of internal controversy over diversity at Google. I know women currently fill, last I looked, about 20% of technical roles, 25% of leadership roles. There are all sorts of other diversity issues. Do you feel as if you're doing enough on diversity, and how do you see your diversity efforts having an impact? And then I'll have one more question after that, and then we'll open it up to the many, many questions in the last 5 minutes that are coming from the audience.
Look, the answer is we have a long way to go. As an industry, we are very behind. Tech is very behind compared to other industries. We were one of the first companies to issue diversity transparency reports. And last year, we made significant racial equity commitments, both internally in the company as well as externally as to what we do with our products. I'm encouraged by early progress. Last year, we saw, for example, the largest increase of Black plus representation in Google since we started measuring it in our annual report in 2014. We've committed to, we are holding ourselves accountable to improve leadership representation of underrepresented groups by 30% by 2025. But last year, was a profound year. I think there is reckoning for all of us to dig deeper and continue this work. And so we are, as a company, we are committed. We don't get everything right, but we have made our commitments public. We will share annually our progress, and I'm committed along with the leadership team and everyone at Google to make progress here.
Okay, thank you. My final question, and I'll turn it over to the audience questions, which are going to come through me. So your company is famous for the mantra, "Don't be evil," sort of the founding mantra. It's something that people at Google took a lot of pride in, and I think people looked at in the world. Is that still a working mantra inside Google? And how do you think the company is doing living up to that?
I mean, we still have it in, when we write our values, we have internally, we have 3 respect values, and, and as part of the framework, we still tell people don't be evil. And, I obviously in everything we do, look, Google is more open than most other companies. So we have an open culture. There's a lot of transparency, and just like noisy democracy, there is debate and discussion, and I'm proud that our employees feel passionately about what we do. We've always given our employees more voice than any other company, and we'll continue doing that. And we view them as important stakeholders. And increasingly, as a society for technology, there are going to be debates. Where do you apply technology? For example, as a company, we have chosen not to offer facial recognition services. And so we set a high bar. When we don't get something right, we learn and we make progress. But I think as a framework, we are, want to wake up every day and make sure everything we are doing is working to benefit society. And that's the journey our employees want to be part of. And, I'm committed to doing that correctly.
Okay. Let me turn to audience questions. How do you see the future of work post-pandemic? What are your concerns about ongoing remote work on teamwork, productivity, diversity, and inclusion?
Oh, I'm so excited about figuring out the future of work. 20 years ago, Google, today many companies have implemented things similar to Google, and in some ways we take it for granted. But we are committed to figuring out what is the best way we can make hybrid work possible. The reason it's important for us is it's not just for how we operate Google, but with Google Workspace and our tools and services, we can help other companies operate in different models as well. And technology will play a big role. I think figuring out how not to always make physical presence be the most important way by which you can be productive, I think is a big thing for technology to solve. We are experimenting with our spaces over time. We are reconfiguring our office spaces to run experiments where it's easy for people to come together and, have group meetings and so on. And there are times they can be productive working from home. And so we are going to run pilots and figure this out. But it's one of the things I'm very excited by, because I think it's going to drive a tremendous improvement in productivity over time globally. Mm-hmm. It'll also pull more people into the workforce who aren't able to be part of it today.
Yeah.
So, to your first question about, am I a technology optimist? Yes, I think future of work is going to be an area where we are going to see more innovation than ever before.
I have time for a very short question and a very short answer to maybe too big a question, but it just goes to the issue of biases in algorithms and AI, and what you're doing to work to keep racial and other biases out of it. And I'm afraid you got to do that in about 90 seconds.
As a company, we have clearly committed to AI principles, and we have deep processes to evaluate. We publish a lot of research. In fact, I mentioned earlier why we chose not to offer facial recognition APIs as a company. We've clearly stated, AI bias being a deep area of concern in our AI principles. We publish a lot of research. Having said that, these are difficult areas. I think as an AI community, we are a bit behind globally in terms of, elevating the awareness and consciousness around all this. And so we all have more work to do there.
Great. I think we'll end here. Really appreciate you joining us. It was very illuminating. You've got a lot of big issues and decisions to make, and so we'll all be watching closely. But Sundar Pichai, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Steve, and congrats on your long journey and your retirement, and hope the next few years are fruitful for you as well.
I appreciate that very much. Okay.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.